Good afternoon. Welcome to This Week in Turkey. The government initiated a new scheme this week to sell cheap produce in Ankara and Istanbul in the face of rising food prices.
In an attempt to counter the sharp rise in food costs in the country, Turkish authorities have opened their own markets to sell produce directly to consumers this week. Under the government initiative, municipalities are selling vegetables at nearly half price. Shoppers, however, have a maximum allowance of 3 kilograms for each item. God willing, after the elections, with the organization of municipalities, we might take steps to carry these sales to the very remote corners of Turkey, Erdogan told traders. Several supermarket chains match the prices set by the government stalls, according to their stores and websites. If the reductions are sustained, February food inflation levels are expected to be curbed significantly. Food accounts for about a quarter of the basket of goods used to measure Turkish inflation, which stood at more than 20% in January. Rising living costs and the currency crisis are a major issue for voters ahead of the March 31st local elections. However, President Erdogan's suggestion that Turkey could extend the initiative after the elections has caused concern among the opposition, who suggests that the costs for the government are not sustainable over the long term. President Erdogan has called the recent fruit and vegetable price hikes food terrorism, vowing that sales launched on February 11th by several municipalities across the country will lead to market control. In recent days, they began playing a game on Turkey. Prices of eggplants, tomatoes, potatoes, and cucumbers began to escalate. It was a terrorist attack, Erdogan said at the opening ceremonies of multiple projects in Ankara. He likened the government's struggle against the hike in food prices to its fight against terrorism. God willing, we will give these economic hitmen a solid Ottoman slap, Erdogan said. Wholesalers, on the other hand, claim that the authorities are not only competing unfairly with the traders, but are also making significant losses. Meanwhile, Finance and Treasury Minister Berat Albayrak has said, self-seeking behavior is unacceptable. The latest information suggests that something intriguing has been going on regarding vegetable prices. We will take the necessary measures. Our citizens will see that any problem could be resolved if the state steps in. Albayrak also announced that the state-run Ziraat Bank will unveil the details of a package designed to support greenhouse farming.
Joining us today to talk about the effects of the rising food prices is Sinan Erensü, who is the head of research at the Center for Spatial Justice. Good afternoon, Sinan. Welcome to This Week in Turkey.
Hi, Aylin. Happy to be here.
So, as you know, long queues have been forming outside the government-run cheap vegetable stalls in Istanbul and Ankara this week, and foreign media seems to be rather puzzled as to the lengths that the Turkish government is ready to go in order to curb the sharp rise in the food prices. So to give some context for our viewers right now, can you talk about how the public is reacting to, or interacting with, rather, the government and this new arrangement?
Yeah, sure. The program is launched earlier this week in two major cities, Istanbul and Ankara, initially. The government representatives suggest that they would spread across the nation incrementally. There are, I guess, 50 at least government-run discount stalls in Istanbul right now. At the moment, only 6 items are for sale. I guess there are potatoes, onions, tomatoes, spinach, peppers, and cucumbers, I guess. There are some of the items, the price per kilo is as low as the half of what you can find at the neighborhood bazaars of the city. For example, tomatoes go for 4.5 lira per kilo at the neighborhood bazaar, while they're for sale for 2 lira at these government-run stalls. This is a significant discount. Maybe not so impressive, though, if you consider that these items were sold for 2 lira last year in these neighborhood farmer markets anyways. A special analysis that I came across the other day illustrates that there is at least one of those discount stalls in walking distance to 3.5 million Istanbul residents. Considering how recent this policy is, or rather very last minute, the policy is, and its implementation is quite remarkable. It's an organizational success indeed, whether you approve the policy or not. But on the other hand, these open-air stalls with no climate protection of any kind, citizens are waiting long periods of time outside, and it's February. February in Istanbul can be quite harsh. For example, earlier today, I was passing by one of those stalls. It started pouring all of a sudden. The queue got shorter. Some waited on the line. Others ran away. Some say the queues are faster now after the first day. Yet things get much more hectic if these stalls begin to diversify their products and start to sell legumes, detergents, lentils, beans, as the government representatives promise. Because currently they only sell on a number of items. Then if they increase these items, queues get longer. It's hard to say much about the demographics of those who wait in the line. Obviously, this calls for an empirical research. But having said that, a number of street interviews suggest that these discount stalls attract both supporters and critiques of the government, as well as the disinterested folks, politically disinterested folks. And retirees seem to be overrepresented, that they are not compensated well, and sad to say so, but they have some time to stand in the line as they are not working. A final note is that the grocery stores also cut their prices down as far as the items that are on sale on the government-run stalls concerned. I believe that they simply want to sell what they have instead of throwing them away or selling for a loss, a significant loss, to keep the customers loyal to the store. But to what extent this is sustainable, of course, it's a huge question.
So, Sinan, as you know, the government, the rhetoric surrounding this new cheap sales scheme right now is quite aggressive. The government, President Erdogan himself actually called the rise in the food prices, quote-unquote, food terrorism. So how do you assess this rhetoric around this new discount stall scheme?
Yeah, very interesting, very telling. By food terror, I believe you're to circulation by the representatives, by Erdogan himself, by the government pundits. But it's a rhetoric that is on circulation for some time to address the high food prices and soaring inflation, which stands at 20% annually right now. So the argument is that the high prices are not the result of a structural problem in the economy, but they are mere symptoms of temporal fluctuations, so to speak, occurs due to manipulation of greedy traders. And perhaps some of them are at the service of enemies of the state, inside and outside. Well, this may sound like a desperate conspiracy theory, which it is, that is used to mask poverty, inequality, and the simple fact that people cannot get by nowadays. But it's also, I think, important to note that this conspiracy, even this is a conspiracy theory, this rhetoric is not invented today. It's not something that appeared out of nowhere. It's part of a political line that is certainly not new. The talk of economic downturn of the so-called AKP economic miracle of maybe mid-late 2000s, it's been on the air. The downturn of that model has been on the air for the last at least 5 years. The economic meltdown has been imminent for the last 4 or 5 years, and the government, at least rhetorically, seemed to be more prepared for the crisis than the opposition is. And that is, I think, remarkable. This political rhetoric with the economic crisis has been quite chauvinistic and at some degree corporatist, from the very get-go, the Republic's most free market ever political party, maybe the AK Party it is, has managed to rebrand itself as a protectionist skeptic about global capitalism, etc. They have not become those things, but they rebranded themselves as such by blaming an invisible global mastermind at every critical economic moment. The government managed to call the ordinary citizen for support, for primarily its own base. So the mastermind, who the mastermind is, that could change according to the context. But what is interesting is that the support, the citizens, the support expected from citizens is not a passive sort of support. Through intricate conspiracy theories, the ordinary folk is almost employed by the government as a hero or heroine of a global adventure. And that's the beauty of the conspiracy theories. They play under the interplay between being a victim and being powerful at the same time. And that is why this rhetoric is not just a rhetoric, but it's a part of a political campaign.
Mm-hmm. So you
and
just...
in the absence of an alternative political horizon, such political campaigns can't be successful.
So, from what I gather, from what you just said, looks like the average voter is prone to buying certain conspiracy theories being created around the food prices. Yet at the same time, the opposition is accusing the ruling party, AKP, and President Erdogan of staging an election stunt, a pre-election stunt ahead of the March 31st elections with these discount stalls. So my question to you is this really a mere vote-buying practice? And if not, how do you make sense of it all?
Yeah, it seems so, because some bureaucrats and other government representatives, they have suggested that the government food stall, this program, would be around at least for 2 months, and the deadline surprisingly coincided with local elections that would be held in late March. Therefore, sure, I mean this is part of an election campaign, but what I'd suggest that it's not a recent one. It's been around for a while, and Turkey went to polls at least 5 times in the last 5 years, maybe more. And there will be a long hiatus after this local election that would be held on late March. So the governing party, or rather the governing coalition, is betting on the fact that, I mean, if they remain relatively strong, and this means first and foremost keeping Ankara and Istanbul municipalities, then they will be fine and okay for the next 4 years, there will be no election in the next 4 years. This sounds right, but it is always harder to govern an unsatisfied poverty and disillusionment, a deep economic crisis, and high unemployment than managing an election or two. So even this is a temporary solution. The government needs to think through about how to govern this deep economic crisis and poverty and unemployment in the future.
So finally, Sinan, as we're beginning to run out of time, I'd like to ask you about this new debate that has been ensued between 2 camps right now, namely those who think that these discount stalls will hurt Erdogan's election campaign, and those who think that, that they will strengthen Erdogan's and the ruling party's grip to power. What do you think? Where do you stand in this debate?
Well, it's hard to give a definitive answer. I should admit that this is a very, very risky last-minute intervention that might have a significant impact on the outcome of the election. For starters, the long queues in the central locations of the major cities are like everyday visual reminders of the existence of an economic crisis. And they are ultimate testaments to the fact that things are not going fine for the ordinary folk. However, this everyday admission of this fact doesn't determine that the government-run stalls will tilt the political equilibrium to one way or another, necessarily. These things are always contingent and depend upon what other actors and how other actors will react to the crisis. And also, something that is not being paid attention much, as far as I'm concerned, is that these long queues, and they seem to, they're going to be around until the election, seems so, are open to all sorts of encounters between the citizens. And remember that the free press is in line in Turkey. People are afraid of posting comments on social media, and all of a sudden we have these huge queues, and you can read these as gatherings of ordinary people in city centers, and you can never know what the outcome will be out of those encounters, waiting in line potatoes or tomatoes for an hour or so. So that's also a huge social risk for the government as well. Just the mere size of these queues and the encounters that they will trigger, I would say.
Thank you very much, Sinan, for being with us and for your comments.
Thanks a lot for having me. Thank you, Aylık.
Today we were joined by Sinan Erensü, who commented on the government's recent measures to tackle the sharp rise in the food prices. And now we'll continue with our next news video.
The summit that brought President Erdogan, Russian President Putin, and their Iranian counterpart Hassan Rouhani together for the fourth time under the Astana process took place in the Black Sea coastal city of Sochi yesterday. Before the three-way summit, the leaders held bilateral talks. Iran, Turkey, Russia will continue efforts to reduce clashes and achieve stability in Syria, the three leaders said during the joint press conference, adding that they agreed to form a committee on a new Syrian constitution as soon as possible. President Erdogan has said that Syria's territorial integrity will not be preserved if the country's east and Manbij city are not cleared of the YPG. Erdogan stressed that Turkey continues to do its part on the Idlib deal while calling for the Syrian regime to obey the ceasefire. Erdogan said the top issue the leaders would discuss was the United States' decision to pull out troops from Syria, although no details of the withdrawal have been made clear. It's very important that we continue to work together in this new era, Erdogan stated, describing the US withdrawal as one of the most important challenges ahead. He also stressed that a US proposal to set up a security zone in northeastern Syria would be considered by Turkey only if it's to assure the safety of its borders and citizens, the president said. We are continuing to discuss the details with the US. We welcome the positive stance of Russia towards this proposal, and we wish to move in coordination to this end, he added. Hopes for a political solution to the Syrian crisis are sprouting as never before, Erdogan added. Erdogan also invited the leaders to hold the next trilateral summit in Turkey. Russian President Putin said that it is necessary to agree about ensuring the definitive de-escalation in Idlib. The three leaders are set to discuss ways to protect Syria's territorial integrity as the US has already declared the withdrawal from Syria, Putin recalled. He also called on the international community to deliver humanitarian aid to the Syrian people without any precondition. Iranian President Rouhani also said al-Nusra still controlled 90% of Idlib province in the face of a deal between Turkey and Russia that aimed to avoid a humanitarian crisis in the enclave. It seems that this agreement will lead to a permanent problem in the region, he said. The Iranian president underlined the need for the protection of the rights of all Syrians, including Syrian Kurds, who have been living in northern Syria for centuries. But Rouhani also raised Turkey's security concerns and stressed that they understand Ankara. We believe the best way to address Turkey's security concerns would be through dialogue with the legitimate government of Syria. As you know, there is the Adana Protocol between Turkey and Syria, he said, repeating a proposal made by Putin last month.
Police detained at least 600 people in nationwide raids on Tuesday as part of a major crackdown against suspects with links to the Gülenist terrorist organization FETÖ.
According to state-run Anadolu Agency, Turkish security forces arrested 641 FETÖ suspects out of a total of 1,112 sought in Tuesday's counter-terrorism operation. Police continued their search for the remaining suspects. The crackdown focuses on a 2010 exam taken by the police officers who wanted to become deputy inspectors. Prosecutors say questions were leaked to Gülen followers before the test. The US-based cleric Fethullah Gülen is accused of ordering the 2016 coup attempt in Turkey, which left 251 people killed and nearly 2,200 injured. He's also accused of being behind a long-running campaign to overthrow the government through the infiltration of state institutions, particularly the military, police, and judiciary.
On February 8th, Turkey lodged an official protest over China's Uyghur detention camps in the Xinjiang region.
After years of silence on the issue, the Turkish Foreign Ministry issued a stern statement denouncing China for violating the fundamental human rights of Uyghur Turks and other Muslim communities. In a statement, Turkish Foreign Ministry spokesman Hami Aksoy wrote, "The reintroduction of internment camps and the policy of systematic assimilation against the Uyghur Turks carried out by the authorities of China is a great shame for humanity." Aksoy specifically mourned the reported death of Abdurrahim Hayit, a renowned Uyghur poet and musician who was among those detained by the Chinese authorities. Turkish daily Yeni Şafak reported that Hayit had died in detention the previous day. However, the New York Times reported that it was unable to independently confirm Hayit's death. Following Turkey's harsh criticism of Chinese authorities, China's embassy in Turkey also issued a statement in which it called Turkey's previous statement a serious violation of facts. Beijing later released a video purportedly showing a healthy Hayit in prison and blasted Turkey for spreading absurd lies. The video's authenticity, however, remains uncertain according to different experts.
According to a Eurostat statement on Monday, the percentage of women employed in science, technology, engineering, and medicine in Turkey has surpassed the EU average in 2017.
The statement said there were around 18 million scientists and engineers in the European Union in 2017 and added that 59% of them were men, while 41% were women. According to the same statement, there were 951,200 scientists and engineers in Turkey in 2017. Around 55% of these were male, while 45% were female. The findings show that the ratio of Turkey's female scientists and engineers is higher than that of a number of EU member states, such as Germany, France, the UK, and Italy. The statement was released by Eurostat to mark the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, celebrated annually on February 11th.
Today, we're ending This Week in Turkey with an excerpt from Nobel Prize-winning Turkish novelist Orhan Pamuk's recent article about Istanbul in The Telegraph. Thanks for tuning in and hope to see you again next Friday at 5 p.m. Goodbye.
It is time to go back to Istanbul. The city streets, which emptied after the military coup in 2016, are thronged with tourists again. In spite of the political situation, the city has managed to rediscover its colors and crowds. And the Cihangir Çukurcuma neighborhoods, where I have lived for the past 20 years, are gradually coming to life. I'm pleased with these developments. It is gratifying to find that even in these dark days, people from all over the world are still interested in you. Cihangir is situated halfway down an avenue that was meant to link Taksim to Karaköy Pier, but that avenue was never built. And so Cihangir became the neighborhood that sat far from any main road and could only be accessed through a web of alleyways. This made it quite a place, insulated from traffic and from the familiar din of the city. While writing The Museum of Innocence, which is set in this neighborhood, and while trawling the local junk shops for objects to display in my museum, I spent a lot of time walking around, and I heard that silence. The best part was that if I happened to feel restless, I could just get up from my desk and go out for a walk among the toys and the sports and film magazines of my childhood. Views of old Istanbul, coffee shops, people eating on the pavements, bookstalls, and old film posters. Then I would sit at a table under one of the tall trees near the Firuza Mosque, outside a cafe or a flatbread shop, and quietly read my newspaper and write in my notebook. It cheered me to see so many familiar faces around me from literary, artistic, and political circles, and to know that most of them were freedom-loving people, critical of the government, and sympathetic to Europe. It made me feel proud of being from Cihangir.